All right, so continuing that video I made yesterday, I guess, about Street Fighter 6, my final beta thoughts. The game turned out how I thought it was going to, basically. But, I was getting comments in the comments about, is the game fun though? If you like the game system, are you going to play? And so I want to talk about accessibility and what is actually fun. And what I was saying in those comments, and I'll, relate this to some different things, even Dragon Ball Fighter Z actually, and Marvel for some reason I was thinking of. Well, what makes a video game fun, right? What makes a video game fun to certain people? That could be, a little bit different, right? Our idea of fun is, maybe a little bit different, but certainly I've always said, there's no precedent to believe, though, that making games easier, you know, makes the game more popular. Street Fighter, when it was one of the most important video games of all time, had the least amount of hand holding in it, right? So there's no precedent to believe that making video games easier actually makes them more popular fighting game wise. There's nothing to believe that whatsoever, as a matter of fact. So, but what makes a video game fun? Oh, you're like, well, you don't think the system necessarily of Street Fighter 6 is terrible, but will you play it? And what I'm getting at is what is fun about Street Fighter 6 that I would want to play it? Because when I think about the game, I think about the person that plays Street Fighter 6 when I think about it, right? And, again, take this with a grain of salt, I guess, because we all have different things that we like. But when I theorize, why would a person actually legitimately like Street Fighter 6? What is it bringing to the consumer that makes them want to play? And that's what I'm getting at. If you just look at it through, it's not a game where you would feel happy that you were able to pull something off in a match, right? There's not like, it doesn't strike me as a game that people call them lab monsters now. It doesn't strike me as a game that you would feel happy to play, that it would be fun to play labbing something, because the game is so pre-planned, so predetermined. And that's what I was getting at. When I was even looking at the game and I was like counting the frames in my head, I was like, this looks like this is probably only a couple frames, a frame or two, whatever, right? But when you actually play the game, since you can mash everything, even though so many links, like look at all the different links in the game, and you're like, wow, that link is specifically for this. This link is specifically for this. And you look at so many different combos, you're like, wow, after the EX Hurricane Kick, drive rush to this just barely works by a frame or two. Just this combo barely works by a frame or two. But everything that barely works with mashing, right? Now, people can say that Dragon Ball Fighter Z is a baby game, and I agree to a certain extent, right? The trend of fighting games, I don't agree with a lot of fundamentals and so much hand holding, but people are making the idea that like, oh, well, you can mash everything in new games. That's not true. You know what I mean? You cannot mash to do everything in every game. Dragon Ball Fighter Z, can you mash to do every single combo in that game? Can you mash to do all those combo videos I did? You know what I mean? Like Dragon Ball Fighter Z, even for as pre-planned and predetermined as Dragon Ball Fighter Z is, you cannot mash to do every single fucking thing in that game. But Street Fighter 6, when I look at it, all those complicated drive combos and everything like that, a lot of that is actually mashable, right? So when I look at that game, you know what I mean? It's so pre-planned and predetermined and set that this move is going to do this move is going to do that. Street Fighter 6, you know what I mean? Street Fighter 6 needs someone's going to have to find the bug or some kind of glitch to change something, because I don't envision people actually enjoying legitimately labbing the game. Legitimately being like, oh, I pulled off that combo in the match because you can mash it. Even though you can say something like, and I've said this before, true, as for definitely true. Even for Street Fighter 4, people were saying that I was apparently doing one frame link combos and everything like that. I didn't even know. And apparently there's a thing like plinking or something in Street Fighter 4. People would say, I don't even know what the fuck that is, right? Just frame stuff, even in older games, and some in older Street Fighter 4s and older, was not really a just frame anymore, right? But we're at the point now where these just frame things are you're just mashing to do it. The games are so lenient, right? And again, Street Fighter 6 is a game that is now a year old by the time that it came out. So the fun of the game, of the novelty of the game being new, is not there. So what is the fun aspect of Street Fighter 6? And that's what I was getting at. The idea of Street Fighter 6, why somebody is going to have fun playing it, is the person that enjoys that sort of aspect of the mind game, meta, whatever, if you will, of you are constantly wagering my meter versus your meter. That tug of war between our meters. Who in this mind game, so to speak, is using their meter more effectively? The idea of when you're playing, like, wow, I effectively used my meter right there. I was watching my meter, and there's going to be so many different ideas of what is a optimal combo. In this situation, this is the optimal combo. In this situation, like, I had one, is it a green bar or is it a yellow bar at the top? Whatever it is, whatever the top bar, I had one bar less here, so this is the optimal combo here. I was already missing two combos here, so this is the optimal combo here. And you're wagering that against the guy's life bar because you might go into burnout state, and you're constantly, meter managing and being an accountant with your meter, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's that sort of tug of war meter management. That is what I envision the person that likes Street Fighter 6. That they're having fun, like, wow, I made the right decision with my meter there. I made the right decision with my meter there. Because if you look at the game, unless you are just that much of a baby, again, if you think about it, you're not going to get that sense of reward for being like, wow, I can't believe I pulled off that combo in the match. I can't believe I pulled off that combo in the match, because it's not there for the game. And the characters are so, and again, I've talked about before, why do you play a game? Sometimes you play a game just for the character, right? And Street Fighter 6, if you look at it, the game is already looks pretty homogenized, actually, the characters, right? Like every character, quotation marks, is using the meter in the same way. Oh, I'm green drive rushing here. Like, I mean, I guess that's a little bit of freedom, you know what I mean? The freedom of, oh, I'm going to green drive rush in neutral, you know what I mean? And then am I going to go high or low? But then the reactions you can, the reactions are not that crazy in that sense. You know what I mean? It's just guessing. Oh, I guess they go here, blah, 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 blah. Or, oh, maybe I want to save some meter in case the guy wants to do their fucking drive impact, whatever. You know what I mean? The point is, when I look at Street Fighter 6, I'm like, what is fun about this game? And to me, when I look at it, that is the main thing that sets it apart, because again, every fighting game, you got to take the good and the bad. No video game is perfect. Some things outweigh the good, some things outweigh the bad, sometimes the bad outweighs the good, whatever. But there's got to be a reason to play a game. And I've said so many times before, sometimes you play a game just because you like the way this character played in the game. But Street Fighter 6, to me, is a game, when I tried to compare it to Guilty Gear Strive, that the system is the most important thing about this game, for better or worse. Guilty Gear Strive is a game where the system is the most important thing about the game, but the system is very terrible. It's a badly made game, which is ironic, because then you look at the characters, and the characters are still the best thing about that game. Street Fighter 6 does not strike me as a game where you're like, wow, the characters are the best thing about this game, because the characters are very pre-planned, right? Like, oh, it's like, oh, well, I anti-aired here. You know what I mean? I have this much meter here, so I can do this drive combo, or drive rush, slimer rush. Oh, I can do this EX move here. The fun factor of Street Fighter 6 to me is completely it almost seems like I don't know why I'm thinking like of a card game for some reason, but I can't think of the exact card game that this would be like. It's like we both have the same hand. How am I using this hand? How am I wagering this hand? Oh, I am missing one card. I'm missing one block of my bar. This is now the optimal combo. I'm missing two bars here. This is now the optimal combo. It's a very mathematical accounting kind of game. You know what I mean? Of course, there's going to be some reactions here, like, oh, I punished this move with this here, blah, blah, blah. But again, people are like, do you think the game is fun? Will you play it? And I don't know if that particular aspect seems fun to me. Do you get what I'm saying? And people are like, oh, well, you know what? You can mash in other games too, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe to a certain extent, but you don't mash everything. Even a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, you don't mash everything. You know what I mean? You're not mashing for the optimal combo here. That's why I'm looking at Street Fighter 6 like I'm like, man, I hope someone finds a bug in this game or something to like throw a monkey wrench into things because it's not that interesting. You know what I mean? The game is obviously very pre-planned and thought out. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad game because it doesn't strike me as a game like Guilty Gear Strive, where Guilty Gear Strive is a bad game. Okay, you can't argue that. No one's there. It's not a well-made game. Even the developers a year into the game said they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. How the fuck can you admit in an interview we don't know why we put this in the game yet, but we're hoping we do something with it? And they did nothing with it. Terrible. Okay. That's not me saying Dragon Ball Fighter Z is a great game. Dragon Ball Fighter Z, I've always said, is the biggest drop ball in the history of fighting games. But Dragon Ball Fighter Z, you can't mash for every goddamn fucking thing and say you did the optimal thing. Street Fighter 6 does not strike me as a game where you're like, wow, I feel rewarded for actually being able to pull that off. You know what I mean? I can't believe you pulled off. Street Fighter 6 isn't a game where people go, wow, I can't believe you pulled off that combo. Street Fighter 6 is a game where I think of that, so many fighting games now, they appeal to the player that wants to read the cliff notes before the match. The people that want to make fighting games a math problem. So much frame data here, so much frame data here. And now the meter is the math problem. The meter in Street Fighter 6 is another math problem for that analytical nerd, that analytical nerd that likes to play fucking blackjack, that counts cards. Do you know what I mean? Poker, whatever, they're constantly wagering things, whatever. That's what Street Fighter 6 is. Even they have brought the math problem even into the fucking meter, right? And I'm not saying that's totally unfun because I can appreciate some of the stuff that they're doing for the meter. Again, I don't agree with EX moves. I hate EX moves. I'd rather just, an EX move be a single sort of special move. Again, I always say, I use the example of, don't give Ryu a regular thrust kick. Make it so he only has an EX thrust kick. Boom. That's his EX move. I think that seems more interesting than everything being an EX move because EX fireballs are terrible. They're not well designed in fighting games. They're terrible for fighting games. I've made videos about it. So again, you say, why would I play this game? Like, I don't know if Ryu seems that fun. That's why I said, because everything is so pre-planned, homogenized. It makes it it doesn't feel like you're exploring stuff. You know what I mean? And I don't know why. For some reason, I was thinking about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite recently too. And God, I don't know. I was thinking about this last night before I made this video. So now I'm really rambling because, why did I want to relate something to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite for this? Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I guess I'll just say this and maybe I'll think about why I wanted to relate it to this because I can't think of exactly how I was trying to relate this to, but Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, if you recall when that game was coming out, I said why that game was going to fail, right? And I even made videos then after the fact, and I was correct. People don't still play Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And I guess maybe I was trying to compare it to, the idea that making games more accessible does not make them better games or that people play them. And Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I call it the treasure map theory, what I talked about in that game, right? The idea that everyone can do the biggest combo in the game, right? And when Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was coming out, it was very soon discovered, within just a few minutes of playing the game, basically, that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and again, I called it the treasure map theory when I talked about it on SRK and all that kind of crap back in the day. And then I made videos about it on YouTube because it turned out that way. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite has this weird sort of thing where once you get to about half life, basically the guy automatically techs, right? If you've ever played the game. And so it's basically like a very small little bit of a math problem of trying to get to that exactly. I don't remember what it is. Maybe someone remembers exactly what it is. Maybe it's like 550, 55% or something exactly. And then once you get to that point, the guy will just basically tech anything. So you want to get as close to that point of 55%, whatever it is, as you can, as possible, and then super or something like that. And even at certain points, the guy will just fall out of the super then, because it's like a very distinct amount of damage you can do. And the brain fart there was basically like, oh, well, you know what? This is the treasure map. This is where the treasure chest is. It's at 50%. And we're giving you all these different tools to get to that 50%. And Ryu, they added like wall slide or a ground slide for the hurricane kick and all these different things. They gave so many characters different tools. And then they gave you all the different infinity stones to get to that 50%. But the problem with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is then because everyone can always do the max damage combo easily, a lot of the times you don't even have to use the tools in your toolkit to get to that X in the treasure map, right? Ryu doesn't need to do all this slide stuff. He doesn't need to do every wall bounce that he has, right? He's always going to get to 50%. I don't need to use all these infinity stones, right? And so then not only does everyone get that same sort of 50%, it also means that every character feels sort of homogenized in their damage output. The big, bulky, strong character does just as much damage as the small pixie character in that game. And then even worse, because you have these infinity stones, you're like, oh, well, I have that, was it the green stone, whatever, it gave you the custom combos. And it's like, well, I don't need a custom combo to get the 50% because I can just get it with these other tools. Oh, I have the power gem. Well, I don't really need the power gem to do more damage because you already put in the system that automatically makes me get 50%, even if I don't use all the tools. And so inevitably, then you saw, oh, well, what do people use? They use that red stone, whatever, and it shot out this little red fireball that homed in on the guy because it was actually versatile, right? You put people in that little blue box because you locked down the guy. And so Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, it was such a fucking brain fart that I don't know how the fuck they even approved whoever was the battle director for the fucking game. You're like, so you're telling me that someone who was saying, one of the problems with Marvel games is you just get locked down and you can't do anything. And then maybe you get hit by an infinite and it always does the same life and so you're dead. So to fix that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make it so everyone just does 50% life. And then you tech out of it. And you're like, well, fuck, that's how you're going to fix it? And you're like, if everyone does 50% life, then the big character is not any better than the little character who has more movement. He's not any better than the character that can lock you down because we're always doing the same damage. Oh, we're going to put in these infinity stones. It doesn't matter because we're going to use the fucking infinity stone that is more of a lockdown. You did not fucking quotation marks fix Marvel. Your accessibility of making the game more accessible to play all these different characters, it didn't fucking do anything. You're a fucking idiot. Maybe that's why I was thinking of it. I don't know how people, fucking people who make video games are some pretty fucking, they're idiots, okay? Now, I say that as someone, I don't know how to code whatsoever. I've always said if I could make my own fighting game, I would. So, unfortunately, people who are making the games are idiots in one way, and maybe they're smart in one way that they can code. But you see the way that people talk about games trying to fix it. Street Fighter 6, you know what I mean? Oh, they're making it so you can master, you can do everything. That's not going to fix the fucking game of making it more accessible or some shit because that's not the problem with the game. That's not the problem with video games. And there's no precedent to believe that because look at fucking Street Fighter 2, the most unaccessible game ever that you basically were going in blind because there never been a fucking game like it before. One of the most fucking important video games of all time. And it didn't hold your hand. So anyway, I guess this video was about the accessibility of video games and what makes a video game fun. And to me right now, I don't know if I feel compelled to play Street Fighter 6 because I don't know if what makes Street Fighter 6 fun is fun to me. Does that make sense? Maybe I'll play it sometime, but I'll tell you what, I was so unimpressed with the game right now that I don't even feel like even getting it now. That's how unfun it seems to me. That's how pre-planned it is to me. It's a year old. The novelty is not even going to be there, Anyway, remember if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. The end.